The massive ship called Celestial Dawn floated silently in the darkness of space. Inside its gleaming corridors, representatives from 47 different species moved about their daily business. Some walked on two legs, others on 4 or 6, some floated through the air while others slithered along the polished floors. This was the heart of the Galactic Coalition, where the great powers of the galaxy met to discuss trade, treaties, and the future of civilized space. Jake Morrison stood in the arrival bay, trying not to look as nervous as he felt. He was 23 years old, fresh out of the human security training program, and this was his first real assignment. His uniform was crisp and new, his equipment carefully checked 3 times before departure. Around him, other security personnel from various species towered over his 6-foot frame. They had scars, medals, and the casual confidence of veterans who had seen real action. Princess Valera of the KWLeth Empire watched the new arrivals from an observation platform above the bay. Her species resembled large insects with sleek carapaces that shimmered in shades of blue and silver. She had 4 arms each, moving with practiced grace as she made notes on a data tablet. Her compound eyes could see far more than human ones, picking up details others might miss. The humans send children now, she commented to her attendant, a smaller Kralith named Sithra. Look at that one. He barely seems old enough to hold a weapon properly. Sithra tilted her head, studying Jake. The humans are new to the Coalition, Your Highness. Only 3 years since first contact. Perhaps they lack experienced personnel. Valera made a clicking sound that indicated mild amusement. Perhaps, or perhaps they simply do not understand the dangers of this work. He looked soft, well-fed, and comfortable, not like the Vorin guards or the Krenth warriors. Down below, Jake was being briefed by Captain Hayes, the leader of the human diplomatic mission. Hayes was in his 50s, gay-haired and serious. He had been a military officer before joining the diplomatic corps, and he ran his security team with precision. You will be assigned to guard duty at the diplomatic reception tomorrow evening, Hayes said, his voice low and professional. Your job is to observe, assess, and prevent problems before they start. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Do not create incidents. We are here to show that humanity can be trusted as a partner in galactic affairs. Understood? Yes, Sir. Jake replied. His voice was steady, but his heart was racing. A diplomatic reception meant hundreds of aliens, any of whom could be threats. It meant politics he did not fully understand, and customs he was still learning. Good, get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. Jake made his way to his assigned quarters, passing through corridors filled with species he had only seen in training videos. A group of Vorthan warriors stomped past, their scales gleaming red and black. Each one was nearly 7 ft tall, with muscles that looked like they could bend steel. They did not even glance at him as they passed. In his small room, Jake sat on the edge of his bunk and reviewed his briefing materials. Reception would take place in the Grand Hall, a massive space designed to accommodate hundreds of beings of different sizes and environmental needs. There would be delegates from all the major powers: the Quyth Empire, the Vorin Collective, the Sarati Union, and dozens of smaller governments. Tensions were high because of ongoing trade negotiations. His job was to stand watch and blend into the background. He thought about what Princess Valera had said, though he had not heard her words. He knew what others thought of humans. Weak, inexperienced, naive newcomers to a galaxy that had been civilized for thousands of years. Most species had overcome their violent pasts millennia ago. Humans still fought wars on their own planet. Most species had evolved on peaceful worlds with abundant resources. Earth was harsh, unforgiving, and had tried to kill humanity at every turn, but Jake had been trained not to think about such things. His instructors had been clear. Stay humble, stay professional, and prove humanity's worth through actions, not words. The next morning, Jake arrived at the Grand Hall early. The space was enormous, with ceilings that stretched up 50 ft, crystalline chandeliers hung from above, casting rainbow light across the polished floors. Tables were arranged in careful patterns, each one designed for specific species. Some held chairs, others had raised platforms or pools of liquid. Other guards were already taking their positions. Jake recognized species from his training: the massive Krenth with their stone-like skin, the sleek Ralithi, who moved like cats, the floating Zephyr, who seemed to drift on invisible currents. Each guard was armed, and looked like they had been doing this job for years. Jake took his assigned position near the eastern wall, where he would have a clear view of the Kraloth delegation's tables. He checked his equipment one final time, then settled into the waiting stance he had practiced 1,000 times in training. Princess Valera arrived an hour later, surrounded by her personal guard. She wore ceremonial robes that marked her status, and her movements were elegant and deliberate. As she passed Jake's position, her compound eyes swept over him briefly. She noted his youth, his clean uniform, his unmarked face. Another rookie, she thought, probably assigned to her section because it was considered safe. The Kraloth Empire was hosting this event. After all, there would be no danger here. She took her seat and began greeting other delegates. The hall slowly filled with beings from across the galaxy, and Jake watched them all carefully, just as he had been trained to do. He did not know that before this day ended, everything would change. Reception had been going smoothly for 3 hours. Delegates mingled, discussed trade agreements, and sampled foods from dozens of different worlds. Jake remained at his post, watching the crowd with quiet attention. He had learned to track multiple conversations at once, noting body language and tone, even when he could not understand the words. Princess Valera was engaged in a discussion with Ambassador Corvin of the Vorin Collective. The Vorins were a proud species, their culture built on concepts of honor and martial prowess. Corvin was old for his kind. His red scales faded to a dull orange, but his eyes were sharp and his voice carried authority. The trade routes through the Helio sector have belonged to the Vorin Collective for 200 years, Corvin said, his tone formal but firm. We cannot simply allow the KWLeth Empire to establish competing stations there. Valera's antenna twitched slightly. Sign of irritation. The Helio sector is neutral space. Ambassador, the coalition charter allows any member species to establish trade infrastructure in neutral zones. Your claim of historical precedent is not legally binding. Legally binding, Corvin repeated, his voice dropping to a growl. Is that how the Kraloth do business now, hiding behind treaties while you undercut our economy? Other delegates began to notice. The rising tension, conversations around them grew quieter, guards from both delegations shifted their weight, hands moving closer to weapons. Jake's attention focused completely on the developing situation. He had been briefed on Vorin culture during training. They valued directness and strength. Insults to their honor could escalate quickly into violence. He watched Corvin's tail, which was beginning to lash back and forth. A bad sign. We hide behind nothing, Valera replied, her voice cold. If the Vorin collective cannot compete in open markets, perhaps that speaks to the quality of your services rather than any unfairness in the system. Coven's eyes widened around him. 3 younger Vorthan delegates stood abruptly. These were warriors, not diplomats, brought along as honor guard. The largest of them, a male named Krax, took a step forward. You insult the collective with your words, Princess, Krax said. His hand rested on the ceremonial blade at his hip. You insult our honor. Hall had gone silent now. Every being present understood what was happening. This was how wars could start, with angry words at a diplomatic function, spiraling into violence. Commander Drenth, the leader of Valera's guard, moved to stand beside her. He was a veteran Quyth warrior, his carapace scarred from a dozen campaigns. Stand down, Vorin. This is a diplomatic reception under the protection of the coalition. Violence here would bring sanctions against your entire government. Then perhaps the princess should learn to speak with more respect, Krax replied. He took another step forward. The other Vorin warriors followed him, their muscles tensed, ready for action. Guards from other species began moving into defensive positions around their own delegates. The Krynth guards formed a wall of stone-like bodies. The Ralithii guards drew their weapons halfway, ready to complete the draw in an instant. The whole situation was seconds away from erupting into chaos. Jake moved. He did not run. He did not draw his weapon. He simply walked forward with calm, measured steps, placing himself between the Vorin warriors and Princess Valera's table. His hands were visible, empty, held loosely at his sides. Gentlemen, he said quietly, looking at each of the Vorin warriors in turn, I think we can all take a step back and let cooler heads prevail. Krax looked down at Jake with disbelief. What is this, human? He laughed, a harsh barking sound. Move aside, mammal. This does not concern your kind. I'm afraid it does. Jake said, his voice still calm. I am assigned to protect the Krolith delegation. That means preventing incidents like this one. Behind her table, Princess Valera watched with a mixture of concern and curiosity. The human was either very brave or very foolish, probably foolish. What did he think he could do against 3 Vorthan warriors? Each one outweighed him by 100 pounds of muscle. You cannot prevent anything, human, Krax said. He reached out with one clawed hand to push Jake aside. You are weak. Your species has been in space for barely a moment. You do not understand our ways. Jake shifted his weight slightly. When Krax's hand came toward him, he was no longer there. He had moved just enough to let the hand pass through empty air. The movement was subtle, economical, almost invisible, but it put Jake in a better position, one where he could see all 3 warriors at once. Krax blinked in surprise. He had not expected the human to move that quickly or efficiently. I understand enough, Jake said, I understand that you are angry about the trade negotiations. I understand that you feel your honor has been challenged. I also understand that if violence breaks out here, the Vorin collective will face severe consequences from the coalition. Is that what you want? Around the hall, other guards were watching now. They had noticed Jake's movement, the smooth way he had avoided contact without making it look like evasion. It was the kind of movement that came from training and practice, not luck. Commander Drenth was watching too. He had dismissed the human as irrelevant when Jake first took his position that morning. Now he was reassessing. The human moved like someone who knew what he was doing. Krax's pride was wounded. A human had made him look foolish in front of everyone. He could not let that stand. You dare to lecture me about consequences? I will show you what happens to those who interfere in Vorthan affairs. He lunged forward, faster than most beings his size should be able to move. His hand shot out toward Jake's shoulder, intending to grab the human and throw him aside. Jake responded with precise efficiency. He turned his body, redirecting Krax's momentum rather than resisting it. The Vorin warrior suddenly found himself off balance, stumbling forward into empty space. Jake had barely touched him, just a light contact on the wrist to guide the movement, but it was enough. Krax caught himself before falling, but the damage was done. The entire hall had seen it. A human half his size had made him stumble. Silence filled the grand hall. Every eye was on Jake and the three Vorthan warriors. The human stood calmly, hands still empty and visible, his expression neutral. He had not attacked. He had not insulted anyone. He had simply not been where the attack expected him to be. Princess Valera leaned forward slightly, her compound eyes fixed on Jake. She had seen many guards over her years, many warriors and protectors. This human moved differently than she had expected. There was no wasted motion, no showboating, just quiet competence. Krax stood frozen, his mind trying to process what had just happened. He was a warrior of the Vorin collective, trained since childhood in combat. He had fought in border conflicts and dueled other champions. Humans should not have been able to do what Jake just did. The other two Vorthan warriors moved to flank Jake, their postures aggressive. Jake tracked both of them with his peripheral vision. While keeping his eyes on Krax, he adjusted his stance slightly, weight balanced and ready to move in any direction. Enough. The voice came from the edge of the crowd. An elderly being floated forward, its body resembling a jellyfish with long trailing tentacles that glowed with soft bioluminescence. This was Rothes, a member of the deep mind species. They were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, present at the founding of the coalition itself. Every being in the hall turned to look at Zeroth. When a deep mind spoke, people listened. They were rare, ancient, and their wisdom was respected across all of known space. Young Krax, Zeroth said, his voice like wind chimes, you are embarrassing yourself. Look around. Every warrior here recognizes what just occurred. Krax's eyes dotted to the other guards in the hall. The Krenth were watching with what might have been approval. The Ralithi guards had relaxed their ready stances slightly. Even Commander Drenth was looking at Jake with new eyes. I do not understand, wise one, Krax said, forcing respect into his voice. The human got lucky, nothing more lucky. Zerath floated closer, his tentacles, weaving patterns in the air. No, young. One that was skill training. Experience, you attacked with aggression. And confidence, and the human used both. Against you, do you know what that indicates? Silence filled the hall. Princess Valera found herself leaning forward, waiting for the answer. It indicates a predator. Zeroth said softly, the humans are new to our coalition, so perhaps many of you have not studied their home world. Allow me to educate you. Zeroth moved to the center of the hall where everyone could see and hear him clearly. Jake remained in position, watching the Vorin warriors but listening to every word. Earth, Zeroth began, is what we classify as a high-gravity death world. Most of our civilizations evolved on planets with gravity between 810 and 910 of standard. Earth has full standard gravity. The difference may seem small, but it means humans are naturally stronger and more durable than most species their size. Valera activated her data tablet, quickly searching for information about Earth. What she found made her antenna twitch with surprise. But that is not what makes them dangerous. Zeroth continued. Earth, world of extremes, violent weather, massive predators, limited resources. That forced constant competition. Most civilized species evolved from prey animals or omnivores who lived in abundant environments. Humans evolved from pursuit predators. Cracks shifted uncomfortably. What does that mean? It means young warrior that humans hunted other animals by chasing them until those animals collapse from exhaustion. A human can run for hours without stopping. They can track prey across vast distances. They can survive injuries that would kill most beings. They evolved to be persistent, adaptable, and above all else, efficient killers. The hall was completely silent. Now, every being was looking at Jake. With new understanding, he still stood calmly, hands visible, expression neutral, but now they saw something else. Beneath that calm exterior, Princess Valera scrolled through the data on her tablet. Human history was filled with wars, conflicts, and survival against impossible odds. Their planet had tried to kill them with ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters. They had survived by becoming the most dangerous thing on their world. Look at his eyes, Zeroth said. Predator eyes, front-facing, designed for tracking movement and judging distance. Look at his teeth. Jake did not smile, but everyone knew humans had teeth designed for tearing meat. Look at how he stands, balanced, ready. He has not drawn a weapon because he does not need to. He is the weapon. Cracks took an involuntary step backward. The other Vorin warriors did the same. They were fighters, yes, but they came from a warrior culture that valued honor and tradition. Humans came from a world where you did whatever it took to survive. Commander Drenth spoke up, his voice thoughtful. The human moved like someone who has fought before, real combat, not training. Captain Hayes, who had been watching from across the hall, decided it was time to speak. He walked forward with a confident stride of a man who had nothing to prove. Jake Morrison is indeed young, Hayes said, addressing the crowd, but he, like all human security personnel, has completed our training program. That program is based on thousands of years of human military history. We have studied warfare extensively because we had to. Our world gave us no choice. Valera looked up from her tablet. How extensive is this training? Jake can fight armed or unarmed, Hayes replied. He can track Targets survive in hostile environments and make tactical decisions under pressure. He speaks 4 languages and has studied the customs and combat styles of every species in the coalition. He may be young, but he is not unprepared. Ambassador Corvin, who had started this whole incident, spoke from his position at the table. We were told humans were new to space. Inexperienced, the briefings made you sound like children playing at civilization. Hayes smiled, but there was no humor in it. We are new to space. Travel we have had faster than light. Capability for only 5 years, but we are not new to conflict, diplomacy, or survival, those skills we learned long ago. Princess Valera stood, her movements graceful despite her shock. I owe you an apology, Officer Morrison. I judged you based on appearances and assumptions. That was foolish of me. Jake finally relaxed his stance slightly, though he remained alert. No apology necessary, Your Highness. I am used to such reactions. Humans are the newcomers here. It is natural for others to underestimate us. Natural, Valera repeated, but clearly unwise. Zerathis made a sound like gentle laughter. The young princess learns quickly. That is good. Understanding others is the foundation of diplomacy. He turned his attention to Krax. And you, young warrior, what have you learned today? Frazzled with his pride for a moment, then bowed his head slightly. I have learned that strength comes in many forms, and that I should not judge a warrior by their size or species. Good, Zeroth said. Now shall we return to the purpose of this gathering? There are trade agreements to discuss, and I believe cooler heads can now prevail. Slowly the tension in the hall began to ease. Delegates returned to their conversations. Guards relaxed back into their normal positions, but everyone was more aware now of the human standing quietly near the Crawl delegation. Jake returned to his post, his face showing nothing of what he felt inside. His heart was still racing from the confrontation, but his training held. Captain Hayes caught his eye and gave him a slight nod of approval. Princess Valera sat down, but her mind was far from the trade negotiations. She opened a new file on her tablet and began a comprehensive study of humanity. If one young guard could surprise her this much, what else had she failed to understand about these newcomers? The reception continued for another 2 hours. Without incident, Princess Valera spent the entire night reading about Earth and its inhabitants. What she discovered both fascinated and disturbed her. Humans had endured ice ages that lasted thousands of years. They had survived diseases that killed millions. They had fought wars with weapons that could destroy entire cities, and through it all they had not just survived but thrived. She read about human endurance, how they could march for days with heavy packs, how their bodies could regulate temperature in extreme conditions, how their minds could solve problems under incredible stress. She learned about their pack bonding, their ability to work together in ways that made them far more dangerous than any individual could be alone. By morning she understood that her initial assessment of Jake Morrison had been completely wrong. She had seen a young, inexperienced guard. She should have seen a representative of the most successful predator species on a world that tried constantly to kill everything living on it. The morning briefing brought new developments. Word of the incident at the reception had spread throughout the Celestial Dawn. The story had grown slightly in the telling as stories always did, but the core truth remained. A human guard had faced down 3 Voran warriors without drawing a weapon and made them back. Down, Lieutenant Kane, another human security officer, met Jake in the corridor outside the briefing room. Kane was older, 35, with a weathered look of someone who had seen combat before. Joining the diplomatic corps, heard you made quite an impression yesterday, Kane said, a slight smile on his face. Jake shrugged. I just did my job. Prevented an incident. You did more than that. You changed how they see us. The Krenth guards asked me this morning if all humans move like you do. The Ralithi want to know about our training programs. Even the Vorthans are showing respect now. Is that good or bad, Kane? Consider the question. Good, I think. Better to be respected than dismissed. But it also means we will be watched more carefully now. We cannot afford mistakes. Inside the briefing room, Captain Hayes addressed his security team. There were 12 humans total assigned to the Celestial Dawn, each one carefully selected and trained. Hayes stood before them with a data pad in hand. The Coalition Security Council has requested a demonstration of human combat techniques. Hayes said they want to understand our capabilities better. I have agreed to a controlled exhibition tomorrow. Kane Morrison, you represent us. Jake felt his stomach tighten. A demonstration meant performing in front of the same people who had watched him yesterday. It meant living up to expectations that might be impossible to meet. After the briefing, Jake found himself approached by Ambassador Chen, the senior human diplomat on the Celestial Dawn. Chen was a woman in her 60s, brilliant and experienced in galactic politics. She had been one of the first humans to make contact with alien species and had guided humanity's entry into the Coalition. Walk with me, Officer Morrison, she said. It was not a request. They walked through the observation deck where massive windows showed the stars beyond. Chen was silent for a long moment, gathering her thoughts. Do you understand what you did yesterday? She finally asked. I prevented a fight, ma'am. You changed the narrative. For 3 years we have been the newcomers, the primitive species that just discovered faster than light travel. We have been polite, humble, eager to learn. All of that was correct and necessary, but yesterday you showed them something different. You showed them that humans are not to be trifled with. Jake did not know what to say to that. Chen continued. The other species have been treating us like children, patronizing us, making assumptions about our capabilities based on our lack of spacefaring history. You challenged those assumptions. Now they are researching us, trying to understand what we really are. That gives us leverage in negotiations. I was not trying to gain leverage. I was just doing my job. I know that is what makes it perfect. You were professional, competent and restrained. You showed strength without aggression. That is exactly the image we need to project. She paused at a window, looking out at the stars. The galaxy is not a gentle place, Jake. The Coalition maintains peace through mutual respect and fear of consequences. Species respect those who can defend themselves. Yesterday you earned that respect for all of humanity. That afternoon, Princess Valera requested a private meeting with Ambassador Chen and Jake. They met in a neutral conference room, a space designed to accommodate multiple species comfortably. Valera arrived with only One attendant a sign of trust. Thank you for meeting with me, Valera said, settling into a seat designed for her. Body structure, I wanted to apologize personally to Officer Morrison for my initial assessment of him. Your Highness, as I said before, no apology is necessary, Jake replied. Perhaps not necessary but deserved. I made assumptions based on incomplete information. That is a failure of intelligence and judgment. She turned to Ambassador Chen. I have spent the night learning about Earth. Your world is remarkable and terrifying. Chen smiled slightly. It can be both. Yes, I did not understand what a death world truly meant. The gravity, the weather, the predators. How did your species survive? We adapted, Chen said simply. We learned to make tools to work together, to never give up. Earth taught us to be stubborn. Valera's antennae twitched with what might have been amusement. Stubborn, yes, I can see that, Officer Morrison certainly demonstrated stubbornness yesterday. I prefer to think of it as determination, Jake said. A fair distinction. Valera leaned forward slightly. I want to ask you something, Officer Morrison. When you faced those Voran warriors, were you afraid? Jake considered lying, then decided against it. Yes, Your Highness. I was afraid. They were bigger, stronger, and there were 3 of them. Fear is a natural response to danger. But you did not show it. You remained calm. Fear and panic are different things. Fear keeps you alert. Panic gets you killed. My training taught me to use fear, not be controlled by it. Valera made a clicking sound of approval. That is wisdom. On my world we are taught that courage is the absence of fear, but I think your definition is better. Courage is acting despite fear. The meeting continued for another hour. Valera asked detailed questions about human culture, military history, and training methods. She was particularly interested in how humans built teams, how they handled stress, and how they made decisions in combat situations. By the end, Jake had a new appreciation for the Krolith princess. She was not just royalty playing at diplomacy. She was intelligent, curious, and willing to admit when she was wrong. Those were rare qualities in any species. As Jake and Chen left the meeting, the ambassador spoke quietly. She will be a strong ally for humanity. The Qwith Empire is one of the largest powers in the coalition. Having their support will open many doors for us. I just answered her questions honestly, ma'am. Sometimes that is all diplomacy requires, honesty and respect. Chen paused. Get some rest. Tonight, tomorrow's demonstration will be watched by every major power in the coalition. No pressure. Jake laughed. Despite himself, none at all. That night, Jake lay in his bunk thinking about the last 2 days. He had joined the security service to serve humanity, to help his species find its place among the stars. He had not expected to become a symbol of human capability. It was a weight he had not asked for but would have to carry. He thought about Earth, about the forests and mountains and oceans that had shaped his species. He thought about all the humans who had come before him, who had survived against impossible odds, who had never given up no matter how dark things became. Tomorrow he would show the galaxy what those ancestors had created, not with pride or arrogance, but with the quiet competence that was humanity's greatest strength. The demonstration never happened. At 3:00 in the morning, alarms began screaming throughout the celestial dawn. Jake was awake and dressed in seconds his training, overriding the fog of sleep. He grabbed his equipment and rushed into the corridor where other personnel were, emerging from their quarters in various states of readiness, all security. Personnel to emergency stations, Captain Hayes's voice crackled over the communication system. We are under attack. Pirates have breached the hull in multiple locations. This is not a drill. Jake's blood went cold. Pirates were common in some regions of space, but they rarely attacked coalition vessels. The political consequences were too severe for them to strike here. Meant they were either desperate or very confident in their plan. He ran toward his assigned emergency station near the CW Leith delegation quarters. Other guards were already moving through the corridors, weapons drawn. The ship shuddered as something exploded in a distant section. Lieutenant Kane appeared beside him, breathing hard. Reports say at least 30 hostiles, maybe more. They disabled our main defenses. Somehow inside help, probably. What do they want? What do pirates always want? High-value hostages. This ship has delegates from every major power. The ransom potential is enormous. They reached the Quyth section to find it in chaos. Quyth civilians were being herded toward secure locations by Commander Drenth and his guards, but Drenth's team was spread thin, trying to cover multiple corridors at once. Princess Valera was separated from her main guard during the initial attack. Drenth said quickly when he saw Jake and Kane, "She is somewhere in the residential wing with only 2 guards. We need to get to her before the pirates do." Jake did not hesitate. "We will find her, Kane, with me." They moved quickly through the corridor, weapons ready. The lights flickered as another explosion rocked the ship. Smoke was beginning to fill some sections, and Jake could hear the sound of weapons fire in the distance. They found the first bodies 2 corridors later. 3 Krolith guards cut down by energy weapons. The burns indicated military-grade hardware, not the cheap equipment common pirates usually carried. These attackers were well-funded and well-equipped. This was planned carefully, Kane muttered, kneeling to check the bodies. They knew exactly where to hit and when. A scream echoed from a corridor to their left. Jake recognized the voice. Princess Valera. He ran toward the sound. Kane right behind him. They burst around a corner to find Valera backed against a wall, her 2 remaining guards already down. 3 pirates surrounded her, their weapons trained on her body. They were a mixed group, species Jake recognized from the criminal databases. He had studied mercenaries for hire, willing to work for anyone who paid. The largest of them, a Krynth with scarred stone skin, noticed Jake and Kane. More guards kill them. The pirates turned their weapons toward the humans. Jake and Kane moved before the pirates could fire, diving in opposite directions. Jake rolled behind a support pillar as energy bolts scorched the air where he had been standing. Humans, one of the pirates spat. The new species. This should be easy. It was the last mistake he would make. Jake came around the pillar low and fast. The pirate tried to track him with his weapon, but Jake was already inside his guard. A quick strike to the wrist sent the weapon clattering to the floor. A follow-up blow to the knee dropped the pirate hard. Kane engaged the second pirate, a Ralithi with cybernetic enhancements. The fight was brutal and efficient. Kane used the confined space of the corridor to his Advantage, limiting the Ralithas. Mobility, within seconds the pirate was disarmed and unconscious. That left the Krenth leader. He was bigger and stronger than either human, his stone-like skin providing natural armor. He dropped his ranged weapon and pulled out a massive blade. Come then, mammals. Let me see what makes you think you can challenge me. Jake circled carefully, watching the Krentha's movements. The alien was confident, probably used to using his size and strength to overwhelm opponents, but Jake had trained against opponents who were bigger and stronger. Size was not everything. The Krenth lunged with surprising speed, his blade sweeping toward Jake's midsection. Jake leaned back, letting the blade pass inches from his body, then stepped in close. At this distance, the Krentha's size worked against him. He could not bring his blade to bear effectively. Jake struck at pressure points he had memorized during his training. Even stone-like skin had weak points where nerves clustered. The Krenth grunted in pain and surprise, backing away. Jake did not give him space to recover. He pressed the attack, staying inside the Krenth's reach, striking with precise efficiency. It took less than 30 seconds. The Krenth collapsed, not dead, but thoroughly incapacitated. Princess Valera stared at the two humans in shock. How did you do that? They were armored, and you just disabled them like they were children. Training and experience, Your Highness, Jake said, already checking the corridor for more threats. Are you injured? No, I am unharmed. My guards protected me. She looked at the fallen Kralith with sadness, but they paid with their lives. Then we honor them by keeping you safe. Now, Kane said, we need to move. There are more pirates on the ship. They began moving toward the secure zones, Jake and Kane flanking Princess Valera. Along the way, they encountered two more groups of pirates. Each time the confrontation was brief. The pirates expected easy targets. They found humans. Instead, word spread among the pirate groups: avoid the humans, they fight like demons. Several groups that encountered human security personnel retreated rather than engage. Others were not so lucky. Captain Hayes was coordinating the defense from the Security Command Center. He watched the tactical displays with growing satisfaction. Every human guard was performing exactly as trained. They worked in teams, communicated efficiently, and showed remarkable combat effectiveness. The pirates are retreating to their breaching points. One of the coalition security officers reported they are taking heavy casualties, much higher than they expected. Could Hayes said, do not let them escape. I want them captured and questioned. Someone help them plan this attack. I want to know who. By the time Jake, Kane, and Princess Valera reached the secure zone, the battle was effectively over. The pirates had boarded with confidence and left in panicked retreat. Nearly half were captured. The rest fled back to their ships, which were quickly destroyed by coalition patrol vessels that had been scrambled at the first sign of attack. The aftermath was chaos. Medical teams rushed to treat the wounded. Security forces searched for any remaining pirates or saboteurs. Damage control crews worked to repair the breached sections of the hull. Jake stood in the command center, giving his report to Captain Hayes and the Coalition Security Council. The council members listened in silence as he described the attacks, the rescues, and the combat efficiency of the pirate groups. When he finished, Z-Rise floated forward. Officer Morrison, You and your fellow humans have demonstrated remarkable capability. Today, the pirates chose this vessel because they believed our guards would be no match for their numbers and weapons. They did not account for human involvement. Princess Valera entered the command center, having changed out of her damaged robes. She walked directly to Jake and placed one of her 4 hands on his shoulder. Officer Morrison saved my life today. He and Lieutenant Kane fought through multiple groups of armed pirates to reach me. They did so without hesitation and with a level of skill that I am only beginning to understand. She turned to address the full council. I came to this vessel believing humans were inexperienced and naive. I thought them unworthy of serious consideration. In coalition affairs, I was catastrophically wrong. The humans are not unprepared. They are not weak. They are a species forged in the fires of one of the harshest worlds in known space. They are warriors, survivors, and protectors, and we would be fools to underestimate them again. The council members looked at each other, silent, conversations passing between them through glances and subtle gestures. Finally, the Sarati representative spoke. The Sarati Union formally requests that human security personnel be made available for assignment to our diplomatic missions. We believe their capabilities would be valuable. The Rathai Concordat seconds this request. Another delegate added, within minutes. Nearly every major power in the coalition had made similar requests. Humanity had proven its worth in the most direct way possible through action. Rather than words, Captain Hayes accepted the requests with diplomatic grace, promising to discuss the matter with Earth's government, but Jake could see the satisfaction in his eyes. This was what they had worked for, what all the training and preparation had been about. Respect earned through demonstrated competence. After the meeting ended, Jake finally allowed himself to feel the exhaustion. His body ached from the fighting. His mind was fuzzy from the adrenaline crash. He found a quiet corner and sat down, closing his eyes for just a moment. Princess Valera found him there an hour later. She sat beside him, her movements careful not to disturb him. You should be resting in proper quarters, she said. Gently, Jake opened his eyes and smiled tiredly. I will, just needed a minute to process everything. You saved my life. I owe you a debt I cannot easily repay. No debt, Your Highness. I was just doing my job. Your job, she repeated. You humans say that phrase often as if risking your life for others is simply routine. On Earth, protecting others is considered one of the highest callings. We have always looked after our pack, our tribe, our community. It is part of what makes us human. Valera was silent for a moment. I think I am beginning to understand your species, Officer Morrison. You are predators, yes, but you are also protectors. You have the capacity for great violence, but you choose to use it in defense of others. That is rare in the galaxy. We learned long time ago that we survive better together than alone, a valuable lesson. She stood preparing to leave. The Quyth Empire will be proposing a formal alliance with humanity at the next Coalition Summit. I will personally advocate for it. You have earned our trust and our friendship. Jake stood as well, managing a proper salute despite his exhaustion. Humanity will be honored, Your Highness. After she left, Jake made his way to his quarters. Tomorrow there would be investigations, reports, and probably more demonstrations of human capability. But tonight he had done what he came to do. He had served with honor, protected the innocent, and shown the galaxy that humanity belonged among the stars. He thought about all the rookies who would come after him, all the humans who would serve as guards, soldiers, and protectors throughout Coalition space. They would face the same doubts, the same underestimation, the same challenges he had faced, but they would also have the same training, the same determination, and the same legacy of a species that had never learned how to give up. Jake smiled as he finally lay down to sleep. Just a rookie, they had thought, until the apex predator's back